office. Let's bring you more background with our Southeast Asia correspondent, Jonathan Head.
It is a very big moment and a rather surprising one. I don't think anyone expected the Marcos administration to move so swiftly and ruthlessly once they got this arrest warrant from the ICC. None of us knew that the arrest warrant was imminent. It was not publicized by the ICC. It was issued on the 7th of March. There was talk about it. There were rumors swirling around. And of course, Mr. Duterte had been on a trip to Hong Kong, rallying support there among the Filipino diaspora, and had talked about it on his travels and seemed to be quite defiant. And I think perhaps didn't expect to be met at the airport by police officers. They whisked him off the plane straight to an Air Force base that's within the same airport perimeter, and within a few hours had a chartered jet waiting to take him to The Hague. So I think everyone's still digesting it. Obviously, he's a very polarizing figure. For those who had family members killed in the drugs war, for people who cared about human rights, who felt that Mr. Duterte's anti-drugs campaign was beyond the pale and that there needed to be accountability. This is a very important moment. It's important for the ICC too, which has not had many successful cases recently, if they manage to get him to The Hague and put him on trial there. But there, of course, Mr. Duterte has many strong supporters, and of course they're dismayed and they've never accepted the argument that he should be extradited. And I think there may be other Filipinos who are a little uncomfortable about the swiftness with which this is happening, and the fact that he is going to end up, by the look of it, in The Hague, in a foreign court, rather than being dealt with in the Philippines. So it's still a divisive issue. It brings the drugs campaign back into focus, and there'll be lots of discussions about that. Huge numbers of people died in that. It was a very, very shocking campaign.
Jonathan, you mentioned his defiance. Well, we have had some eyewitness footage from his daughter, Veronica, that shows Mr. Duterte in custody, and he really is questioning the reasonings behind his arrest. Let's have a listen.
For detention, and the basis for detention. So, what is the law and what is the crime that I committed? To me now, the legal basis for my being here, as apparently I was brought here not of my own volition. It's somebody else's. So you have to answer now for the deprivation of liberty.
5 minutes ago, she'd never played piano.
So still defiant there, Jonathan. When we look at the war on drugs and what is happening at the Philippines at the moment, what are the Marcos administration doing?
Well, the war on drugs has effectively over. There are still occasional controversial killings, but its real intensity was in those first 3 years of the Duterte administration from 2016 to 2019, just before COVID. What is far more interesting, I think, in what's happened in the Philippines is that these are two very powerful families. The Duterte clan, very powerful in the south. The Marcos is, of course, notorious in the Philippines because of the former dictator Ferdinand Marcos. They've been very powerful in politics for a long time. They formed this alliance while Mr. Duterte was still in power, and made a deal about running for the last election in which Bongbong Marcos would be the presidential candidate and Mr. Duterte's daughter, Sara Duterte, became vice president. Putting their popularity together, what has happened is that this alliance has broken down spectacularly. I mean, really badly, to the point where last year, Sara Duterte said she'd actually hired an assassin to kill President Marcos if anything happened to her. And I think the ICC arrest warrant has to be seen in that context. In the early years of the Marcos administration, President Marcos actually said he would not cooperate with the ICC. That has obviously changed a great deal. I mean, we've still got to wait to see whether the Philippine Supreme Court will accept the petition from Mr. Duterte's side that his arrest was not legal under Philippines law. But it looks like the Marcos administration is willing to move very, very quickly to get him out of the country. And it will weaken the Dutertes. These two families are now in a bitter political rivalry for power in the Philippines. We've got a midterm election coming up in May. And, you know, there was always a question about who would become president when Mr. Marcos leaves office in 2028.
So our Southeast Asia correspondent Jonathan Head, as we see these pictures full frame, and I can tell you this is the airport in Manila where things are moving very quickly. We're hearing from Sara Duterte, the daughter of the former president, and also now from his lawyer, who say he has indeed boarded this plane, and that plane, we understand, is en route to The Hague. So let's bring in, as we continue to see these pictures, the barrister Sir Geoffrey Nice, who was lead prosecutor at Slobodan Milosevic's 2002 trial at the ICC. Very good to have you with us here on the BBC. The ICC facing lots of other challenges when it comes to other high-profile cases. So this one is potentially massive for the court. Could you explain the significance, if indeed we do see Rodrigo Duterte in The Hague tomorrow?
Yes, it is a pretty interesting development when one might expect the ICC to be under pressure from America to stop its work or to limit its work in respect of either Putin or Netanyahu. And here we find an investigation into somebody who's never denied that under his leadership, both as mayor and then as president, the country was subject to a large number of what looked to be, without doubt, extra legal killings. His defense, of course, is that, or was, that this was all done in defense of the people generally, because these people were dealing in drugs and the drugs war had to be won. There may, of course, be some suggestion that that wasn't necessarily the only category of people who were looked for, but probably many of them might fall within that category, at least according to his categorization of them. But many of them were young, very young drug dealers, if they were, who may have had little option in the society in which they lived but to do that which they did. So the issues before the court are going to be extremely interesting and no doubt hard fought, including, I dare say, his transfer, which we now hear has happened automatically, or not automatically, simply by government action. That no doubt will be trawled over and considered by the court when he first appears there. And then the whole business of whether this was, as it has to be for the purposes of crimes against humanity, a widespread or systematic attack at a civilian population. Really interesting stuff.
So, Geoffrey, we're just looking at these live pictures from Manila, so we don't actually think he's left yet, but we're being told he is on board this plane. Do we know for sure? I know that's the allegation, but have the charges actually been laid that it will be crimes against humanity?
As far as I know, yes. I haven't, it's all happened very quickly. I haven't gone back to research. But yes, it's going to be crimes against humanity. Can't really, I think, necessarily be anything else, because it certainly can't be war crimes or genocide. But crimes against humanity, it can be. And the numbers dead, I know the numbers are challenged, but they're in the many thousands alleged. And some organizations, I think, Human Rights Watch or Amnesty, think the numbers are greater than those generally discussed. The numbers alleged would certainly, if crimes are committed with the sufficient purpose, they would certainly qualify as crimes against humanity. What is going to happen in the court has never been, I think, discussed before, that yes, these things happened, but they were done for an apparently good intention.
Can I ask you about a technicality? Because we saw Rodrigo Duterte for many years mock the court, and he said that it was a threat to the country's sovereignty at one point, and then the Philippines was actually withdrawn from the founding treaty of the court back in 2019. Does that matter, or is the jurisdiction still there?
Well, first of all, it was said that he organized the withdrawal because of his concern about being investigated. No, as far as I'm concerned, jurisdiction existed up and until that date. And I think you'll find the prosecution will say they've got enough evidence, both for his time as mayor and thereafter, to have him properly tried in The Hague.
So what happens when he arrives? If indeed he gets on board this plane that we can see right now, about a 12-hour flight perhaps, to Europe and to The Hague, what happens next?
Well, he'll be taken into custody and there'll be all sorts of safety procedures applied then, and then he'll be taken to the court, and in due course he'll be asked to plead to an indictment.
And this is all happening and could only have happened with the full cooperation of the Philippines government?
Yes, I mean, one of the problems, I mean, your previous contributor, I think, mentioned it, these two families being at war,